There is an unignorable beast blazing the world of BattleBots right now. On an 18-fight winning streak, Manta is currently competing in BattleBots Pro League, having won both of their first 2 fights in that competition easily. And by and large, that's how their whole career has gone. In 2023, Manta won the first competition it ever competed in. It's extremely rare for a robot to win its first ever contest due to the reliability issues that come with a new robot. And they did suffer reliability issues, by the way, bursting into flames during the only fight they are ever known to have lost, Manta's second battle. Manta is not known to have lost a fight since then, despite fighting at least 24 battles across its entire career, by my count. Some people have now been predicting that Manta could become the next Bite Force, a robot which won BattleBots on 3 separate occasions and only ever lost a fight once. So, with Manta's winning streak seeming as unstoppable as ever, one question has been on my mind for the past few months. Is there anyone out there at all who can beat Manta? And if so, who? Well, the obvious answer is Huge. Huge's awkward design would make it very difficult for Manta to cause serious damage to the robot, but Manta is a drum spinner, and Huge has already lost to a drum spinner in this season of BattleBots Pro League. Plus, even if Huge is good enough of a robot to beat Manta, they might not even get a chance to, considering the way things are going. They probably aren't going to make it out of the group stage of Pro League. So, is there anyone who not only can beat Manta, but is probably going to fight them? Yes! You already know who I'm talking about because you've read the title, but I have gone through every single robot in BattleBots Pro League and concluded that there not only is a robot in there that is capable of beating Manta, optimized against them even, but that robot is going to fight them in the next round. I am of course talking about Terrortops. Manta's weapon is a 75-pound egg beater drum, which takes up almost the entire front of their robot, spins at 10,000 RPM, and they use to obliterate their opponents. In my last video about Pro League, I described why drum spinners like Manta can be such an effective design. There are several reasons, and I didn't even go into all of them in my last video, but the crucial point for this video is that Manta has found a way to nullify the most effective countermeasure against their weapon type. Wedges are the shape most likely to deflect drum spinners. 10 years ago, you might have been able to beat a drum spinner by simply putting a strong, low-angled wedge on the front of your robot and using it to deflect all their hits. But once wedges become the most effective countermeasure against drum spinners, well, drum spinners have to work out what the most effective countermeasure against wedges is. Forks. Long, thin strips of metal which hug the ground and are so sharp that they are capable of getting in underneath wedges. This allows the drum to bend the wedge upwards in a single hit. This would render the wedge useless, as it can now no longer get under opponents nor deflect hits from the drum spinner. And those forks on the front of Manta are one of several reasons why it's become such an effective robot. Had Manta not had the forks on the front, maybe Original Sin or Stink Eye, both robots with wedges, could have beaten Manta in robo games, but instead, Manta's forks got in underneath those wedges, and Manta remains almost undefeated. Fortunately, Manta does have a couple of weaknesses. Manta's forks are very far apart from each other, so if you can simply make sure the wedge on the front of your robot is relatively narrow, you'll probably pass between those forks and just deflect the hit from the drum spinner. In the fight between Stink Eye and Manta, Stink Eye's wedge was actually narrower than Manta's forks, which is why they were able to get between those forks, hit Manta head on, and get one decent hit on Manta's drum. However, this tactic isn't without risk. If Manta can attack at the right angle in the right position, they will still get their forks under your wedge and bend it upwards, which is how Manta did eventually beat Stink Eye. This fact does make Manta significantly more difficult to beat, but fortunately for the people who have to fight Manta, they do have another weakness. You see, if you flip Manta over, Manta is capable of running both ways up. Those wheels are on the other side of their robot as well, but once you flip Manta over, those forks are raised several inches off the ground. And this means that those forks are not going to be getting under anything important, much less a wedge. And so that wedge that you have on the front of your robot can once again, just like it could 10 years ago, very easily deflect the blows from Manta's drum. So, if you asked me to build a robot that was specially designed to beat Manta, I would build a robot with a wedge shape on the front, a wedge that was substantially narrower than the gap between Manta's forks. I would also make sure my robot was capable of flipping my opponents over. I would then pass between Manta's forks, deflect the hit from their drum spinner using the wedge, and flip them over at the first opportunity. And of course, once I flip them over and raise their forks off the ground, I can just spend the rest of the fight deflecting all my hits very easily using my wedge. That's my criteria for what it would take to beat Manta. And as it turns out, Terrortops, the robot that will fight Manta in its next battle, meets that criteria pretty well. Whenever Terrortops has to fight a drum spinner, they put this narrow wedge on the front of their robot. A wedge that looks, at least, to be significantly narrower than the gap between Manta's forks. This wedge, by the way, is on the end of a lifting arm that is designed to flip robots over. We've actually seen them do this, by the way. During the fight between Switchback and Terrortops, Terrortops got that wedge between Switchback's forks and flipped them over right at the start of the battle. So we have already seen Terrortops do the exact thing that they would need to do to beat Manta. And if they can do it once, they can do it again. Now, there is a very obvious counter-argument you could be making to my opinion that Terrortops could beat Manta, and that is that Manta has beaten Terrortops in the past. In 2023, Terrortops tried to attack Manta. They put a narrow wedge or scoop on the front of their robot. They went in, passed between Manta's forks, as they should, and instead of deflecting that hit from the drum and flipping Manta over, as they probably intended, instead they took a nasty hit and got launched into the air. However, there is a difference between Terrortops in 2023 and Terrortops now. The whole point of a wedge is that the wedge is at a low angle, and so the spinner just glides right off it rather than getting a good engagement. And so, if you have a wedge that is at a high angle, you've kind of defeated the purpose of a wedge, at least in the context of trying to fight a spinner. In 2023, Terrortops' wedge, or I don't even know if you can call it a wedge, its scoop, was at a very high angle, and so obviously Manta got a good hit on it and chucked it into the air. But since then, Terrortops has gotten a lot better. Their new wedge is at a much lower angle and has a much higher chance of deflecting Manta's drum spinner. And this new wedge has proven capable of deflecting drum spinners before. So, is that it then? Is Terrortops destined for glory? Is it this silver bullet that is easily going to beat Manta and lift the Pro League trophy? No. Despite the fact that Terrortops is a good candidate for who's going to beat Manta, there are still so many things that could go wrong for Terrortops in this fight. First off, Manta could attack Terrortops at a place or a angle that allows them to get their forks underneath Manta's wedge, which could cause Manta to bend the wedge upwards. And Manta only really needs one good attack to render that wedge useless. Second of all, even if Terrortops does manage to flip Manta over, their next move might be to just hit Manta with their deadly vertical spinner. This might do some damage to Manta, hopefully it will, but it's also just as likely to turn Manta the right way up again, and they're back to square one. So I still think that in this upcoming fight, the odds are against Terrortops. If somebody pointed a gun to my head and told me to bet my life on who was going to win this fight, I would say that Manta's going to win. Now, that's not to say I don't want Terrortops to win. I, along with both of the two people that I watch BattleBots with, are all big fans of Terrortops. We have been excited for this Terrortops Manta fight all season, okay? And we do want Terrortops to win. We'll all be rooting for Terrortops. But 2 out of the 3 of us have to admit that Manta is still probably going to win. This is one of those situations where my head says Manta, but my heart says Terrortops. But I do genuinely believe that if anyone in Pro League has a chance of beating Manta, it's Terrortops. Well, okay, Huge and Malice probably have a chance of beating Manta in my opinion, and most British flippers, such as the Iron Ore robots, could also probably have a chance of beating them. So Terrortops isn't the only robot in the world that could beat Manta, but I still chose to focus on Terrortops because A, Terrortops is the robot that I'm rooting for in Pro League. I want it to win, but also this video is a lot more interesting if it's about a robot that we know for a fact will fight Manta within the next month. Anyway, that's my thoughts on how to beat Manta. Bye!